Something is moving through our solar system right now that defies every law of physics we thought we understood. Astronomers are calling it 3I/ATLAS, but what they're seeing through their telescopes is keeping them awake at night with terror. This isn't just another comet. This thing is changing its shape every single hour. Not crumbling apart like comets do, not slowly melting as it approaches the sun. It's morphing, reshaping itself, transforming into geometric patterns that look disturbingly deliberate. Right now, as you're watching this video, 3I/ATLAS is out there in the darkness of space, literally folding and unfolding itself like some kind of cosmic origami. And nobody can explain why. The most disturbing part? Some researchers are whispering that it looks alive, that it's breathing, that it's watching us. What exactly is this thing hurtling toward our solar system? And more importantly, what does it want? But before we find out, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. On July 1st, 2024, automated telescopes scanning the night sky picked up something that shouldn't exist. An object moving through the constellation Perseus at impossible speeds, following a trajectory that screamed one terrifying truth. This thing came from outside our solar system. At first, astronomers thought they had another mysterious visitor like Oumuamua, the cigar-shaped object that baffled scientists in 2017. But within days, 3I/ATLAS began doing something that made Oumuamua look normal by comparison. It started changing. The first reports were dismissed. Equipment malfunction, they said. Dust clouds breaking apart from a normal comet, they insisted. But as observation after observation poured in from telescopes around the world, the horrible truth became undeniable. This object was reshaping itself, deliberately, systematically, hour after hour after hour. The scientific community went into panic mode. Emergency meetings were called. Data was classified, because what they were seeing violated everything they thought they knew about how objects in space behave. 3I/ATLAS wasn't just passing through our solar system, it was performing. When NASA's most powerful instruments locked onto 3I/ATLAS, the readings they got back were absolutely terrifying. This wasn't random destruction or natural weathering. The patterns were geometric, mathematical, precise. Every hour, like clockwork, 3I/ATLAS reshapes itself. Sometimes it stretches into a perfect spiral. Other times it folds into angular configurations that look almost crystalline. Most disturbing of all, it sometimes pulses, expanding and contracting like a massive heart beating in the vacuum of space. The energy readings are what really scare scientists. When 3I/ATLAS rotates to face the sun, it doesn't just reflect light like a normal space rock. It absorbs solar radiation and then does something with it, something that creates energy spikes that our instruments can barely measure. Computer models trying to explain 3I/ATLAS keep crashing. The mathematics break down. No known physics can account for a natural object that behaves this way, which has led some researchers to consider a possibility so terrifying they only discuss it in whispers. What if 3I/ATLAS isn't a comet from deep space, but something far more sinister? What if it's a probe sent by something that wanted to study our solar system? Think about it. An object that can change its shape at will would be perfect for different types of observation. Stretch into a long, narrow configuration to scan wide areas. Fold into a compact sphere to focus on specific targets. Pulse and reshape to test how we respond to different signatures. This wouldn't be the first mysterious interstellar visitor. Oumuamua in 2017 accelerated in ways that suggested it might be artificial. But unlike Oumuamua, which zipped through our system and disappeared, 3I/ATLAS seems to be taking its time, almost like it's studying us. The hourly transformations could be data collection phases, each new shape designed to gather different types of information about our planets, our sun, maybe even our technology. And the most chilling possibility of all, What if every time 3I/ATLAS changes shape, it's transmitting what it's learned back to wherever it came from? The question isn't just what 3I/ATLAS is anymore. The question is, are we being watched? Are we being evaluated? And by what? If something sent 3I/ATLAS to study us, what happens when it reports back? Ancient texts from civilizations around the world describe celestial objects that behaved in ways remarkably similar to what we're seeing now. Babylonian astronomers wrote about wandering stars that changed their appearance nightly, stretching and coiling like serpents in the sky. Mayan codices describe comets with tails that danced and shifted patterns that seemed to respond to earthly events. Chinese astronomical records from over 1,000 years ago mention celestial lanterns that transformed their shape every few hours, cycling through patterns that repeated like a cosmic clock. Medieval European chroniclers described comets as angels of warning that morphed between different forms to deliver different messages. For centuries, we dismissed these accounts as primitive misunderstandings of natural phenomena. But what if they weren't misunderstandings at all? What if ancient astronomers were accurately describing exactly what they saw? What if 3I/ATLAS is just the latest in a series of visitors that have been coming here for millennia, studying us, watching our development, reporting back to something waiting in the darkness between the stars? The pattern is too consistent to ignore. Shape-shifting objects from space have been recorded throughout human history. And now one is here again. What changed? Why now? What are they preparing for? The energy readings from 3I/ATLAS are keeping physicists awake at night. This object doesn't just passively reflect sunlight like every other space rock in existence. It actively absorbs solar radiation and then redistributes it in patterns that suggest conscious control. Every time 3I/ATLAS changes shape, its reflectivity changes too. Dark when it wants to absorb more energy, brilliant when it needs to reflect. It's like watching something adjust its skin to regulate its temperature and energy intake. No natural object does this. But here's the really disturbing part. 3I/ATLAS is completely silent on radio frequencies. No signals, no transmissions, no communication that our instruments can detect. Yet sensitive equipment picks up strange electromagnetic pulses whenever it reshapes itself. Pulses that follow mathematical patterns. Some researchers believe these aren't random energy discharges. They're controlled bursts. Precisely timed. Deliberately modulated. The signature of advanced technology managing massive amounts of energy with surgical precision. The debate raging in classified meetings comes down to one terrifying question. Is 3I/ATLAS alive, or is it a machine? Because increasingly, those seem like the only two possibilities that fit the data. Either we're watching a living organism that evolved in the depths of interstellar space, or we're looking at technology so advanced it might as well be alive. And honestly, both possibilities are absolutely terrifying. Right now, 3I/ATLAS is still in the outer reaches of our solar system, but its trajectory is bringing it closer to the inner planets. And if current calculations are correct, we might be looking at a flyby that changes everything we know about our cosmic neighborhood. The gravitational effects alone could be catastrophic. An object that can actively change its mass distribution could destabilize asteroid belts, alter planetary orbits, or trigger massive solar storms as it interacts with our sun's magnetic field. But the real terror lies in what 3I/ATLAS might do when it gets closer to the sun and has access to truly massive amounts of solar energy. The hourly transformations we're seeing now might just be low power mode. What happens when this thing has unlimited energy to work with? Earth's magnetic field could be disrupted. Our weather patterns might shift dramatically. Satellite communications could be knocked offline. The aurora borealis might become visible at the equator as our planet's protective magnetic bubble fluctuates wildly. And that's assuming 3I/ATLAS is just passing through. What if it's not? What if those hourly shape changes are preparations for something bigger? What if it's building up to a transformation so massive it will fundamentally alter its structure? What if the object that eventually leaves our solar system is completely different from the one that entered it? When SETI scientists aimed their most sensitive antennas at 3I/ATLAS, they expected to find either clear alien signals or absolute silence. What they found instead was somehow more unsettling than either possibility. 3I/ATLAS broadcasts no obvious messages, no mathematical sequences, no prime numbers or universal constants. But buried in the background electromagnetic noise around the object, there are patterns, subtle harmonics that repeat every few hours, frequency modulations that seem to follow the same rhythm as the shape changes. Some researchers believe the signal isn't radio at all. They think the message is the transformation. That every geometric pattern 3I/ATLAS creates is a form of visual communication, like cosmic sign language being broadcast to anyone with telescopes powerful enough to see it. If that's true, then 3I/ATLAS has been talking to us since the day we discovered it, and we've been recording every word without understanding a single syllable of what it's trying to say. The most chilling possibility is that 3I/ATLAS isn't trying to communicate with us at all. Those patterns, those precisely timed transformations, might be status reports, updates being transmitted back to whatever sent it, describing everything it's learned about our solar system, our technology, our defenses. Every hour, 3I/ATLAS changes shape. Every hour it might be saying, still watching, still learning, still preparing. But preparing for what? Publicly, space agencies around the world are calling 3I/ATLAS an interesting astronomical phenomenon deserving of continued study. Privately, emergency protocols are being activated for the first time since the Cold War. NASA, the European Space Agency, and China's space program have formed an unprecedented joint task force with a single mandate: monitor 3I/ATLAS every hour of every day until it leaves our solar system. No object in history has received this level of constant surveillance. Leaked documents suggest that several world governments have activated contingency plans typically reserved for asteroid impact scenarios. Not because 3I/ATLAS poses a direct collision threat, but because nobody can predict what it might do as it gets closer to the sun. Military tracking stations normally used for missile defense are being quietly retasked to maintain constant observation. Deep space communication arrays are on standby, and in bunkers around the world, emergency committees are meeting to discuss scenarios that officially don't exist. The public remains largely unaware of the growing panic among world leaders. Social media discussions about the morphing comet are being subtly suppressed. Scientific papers about 3I/ATLAS face unusual publication delays. Information is being controlled in ways that suggest someone, somewhere, knows more than they're telling. Online communities have started calling it the living comet, and that nickname is spreading faster than authorities can contain it, because increasingly that's exactly what 3I/ATLAS looks like to anyone paying attention. Something alive, something intelligent, something watching us from the darkness. Religious scholars studying 3I/ATLAS have made connections that are sending shockwaves through faith communities worldwide. Ancient prophecies speak of signs in the heavens, of stars that behave unlike any star should behave. The book of Revelation mentions a star called wormwood that falls from heaven burning like a lamp. But here's what's truly disturbing. Revelation also describes this star as the third angel, and 3I/ATLAS is literally the third interstellar object ever discovered. The mathematical precision of this connection is making even skeptics uncomfortable. Islamic texts describe the star that changes its face as a sign of the end times. The Hadith specifically mentions a celestial body that transforms like clay in the potter's hands and appears when the time of judgment draws near. The hourly morphing of 3I/ATLAS matches these descriptions with terrifying accuracy. Hindu scriptures speak of Kalki, the final avatar, arriving when the wandering light dances in the sky. The Bhagavata Purana describes a cosmic visitor that assumes many forms to test the faith of mortals and speaks through shapes that only the wise can read. Every geometric pattern 3I/ATLAS creates seems to echo these ancient warnings. But it gets worse. The Mayan long count calendar, which supposedly ended in 2012, might have been misinterpreted. Recent archaeological discoveries suggest the calendar was tracking celestial events, not earthly ones. And according to these new interpretations, we're supposed to see the shape-shifting star appear exactly when 3I/ATLAS showed up, in the summer of 2024. Buddhist texts mention the Star of Maitreya that will herald the coming of the future Buddha. This star is described as neither fixed nor falling, but dancing between forms, and will appear when humanity must choose between wisdom and destruction. The timing couldn't be more perfect, or more terrifying. For centuries, these were considered symbolic language, metaphors for spiritual transformation or societal change. But 3I/ATLAS is forcing religious leaders to consider a possibility that keeps them praying through the night. What if these prophecies were literal descriptions of something their authors actually witnessed? What if shape-shifting objects from deep space have visited before? What if ancient prophets were trying to warn future generations about exactly what we're seeing now? What if every major religion on Earth has been preparing humanity for this exact moment for thousands of years? The most unsettling discovery comes from cross-referencing these prophecies with astronomical data. Every major appearance of a transforming star in religious texts corresponds with historical periods when civilizations suddenly advanced or mysteriously collapsed. The pattern suggests these visitors don't just observe, they intervene. End times believers are tracking 3I/ATLAS with obsessive intensity, matching its behavior against prophetic timelines that suddenly seem less symbolic and more like countdown clocks. They're asking questions that make even skeptics lie awake at night. Why now? Why is this happening in our lifetime, in our generation? Is 3I/ATLAS a warning, a test, or the beginning of something that will fundamentally transform human civilization forever? The most chilling aspect isn't that these prophecies exist across every culture on Earth. It's how specifically they describe what 3I/ATLAS is actually doing, as if whoever wrote them had seen this exact object before and knew it would return. The scientific community is splitting into camps that barely speak to each other anymore. On one side, researchers demanding more data, better instruments, peer review, and rational explanations. On the other, scientists quietly admitting that nothing about 3I/ATLAS makes sense within our current understanding of physics. Off-the-record interviews reveal a disturbing truth. Some of the world's most respected physicists and astronomers are privately acknowledging that we might be looking at something beyond our current scientific paradigms, something that requires us to consider possibilities we've always dismissed. Meanwhile, religious communities are experiencing their own crisis. Progressive theologians argue that 3I/ATLAS proves divine intervention in cosmic events. Traditional believers insist it fulfills ancient prophecies about the end times, and a growing number are asking whether there's any meaningful difference between sufficiently advanced alien technology and what our ancestors called divine intervention. Conspiracy theorists aren't helping the situation. They're convinced that world governments already know exactly what 3I/ATLAS is and are hiding the truth to prevent global panic. Some claim secret contact has already been made. Others insist that 3I/ATLAS is the advanced scout for an invasion fleet. The public is caught in the middle, watching experts argue about data while religious leaders debate prophecy, all while this impossible object continues its hourly transformations in clear view of anyone with a decent telescope. The question isn't whether 3I/ATLAS will change our world, The question is whether we'll have any say in how that change happens. Here's what's keeping astronomers awake at night, the detail that hasn't been released to the public yet. 3I/ATLAS isn't stable. The hourly transformations are accelerating. When 3I/ATLAS was first detected, it changed shape roughly every 60 minutes. Now it's transforming every 45 minutes. Last week, monitoring stations recorded changes occurring every 37 minutes. The pattern is accelerating exponentially as it gets closer to the Sun. Mathematical models suggest that within months, 3I/ATLAS will be reshaping itself continuously, and nobody knows what that means for an object that already defies explanation. But here's the truly terrifying part. The closer 3I/ATLAS gets to solar radiation, the more complex its transformations become. Early shape changes were simple geometric alterations. Recent transformations show intricate internal structures, nested patterns within patterns, configurations that look almost architectural. What if the hourly shifting isn't random behavior or simple data collection? What if 3I/ATLAS is building something? What if every transformation is adding another component to some massive construction project happening in plain sight? The object that entered our solar system 6 months ago was roughly comet-sized. The object currently being tracked is already showing signs of internal complexity that suggest it might be far larger and more sophisticated than anyone initially realized. Computer projections of 3I/ATLAS's continued evolution are classified, but leaked fragments suggest something that should be impossible. By the time this object reaches its closest approach to the Sun, it might be larger and more complex than anything in our solar system except the planets themselves. What arrives in our skies may not be what was first detected at all. And if that's true, if 3I/ATLAS is still in the process of becoming whatever it's supposed to become, then we're not just witnessing the passage of a mysterious visitor. We're watching something transform itself in preparation for what? The answer to that question might determine whether humanity has a future among the stars, or whether we're simply the latest civilization to be catalogued by something vast and patient and utterly alien, moving through the cosmos for purposes we can't even begin to imagine. 3I/ATLAS is out there right now, changing itself again, preparing for something we don't understand. And in a few short months, we're going to find out exactly what it's been building toward, whether we're ready or not.